I've been a forest ranger for nearly 2 decades now, and I've seen more than my share of strange things out here. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened last week. It was a Tuesday, one of those days where the sun is a little too bright and the silence a little too deep. I was on my usual patrol, the dirt path beneath my boots as familiar as the lines on the palm of my hand, when I stumbled upon something that didn't quite fit the usual mold. At first, I thought it was just a bunch of teenagers playing a prank. You know, the kind that think it's funny to mess with the wildlife or leave their trash behind. But as I got closer, the laughter in my throat turned to a gasp. There, hanging from a tree, was a doll, dressed in clothes that were too small, too tattered to be from any store. It was suspended by a noose made of twine, and its lifeless plastic eyes stared into the void. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine, despite the heat beating down from above. The area around the doll was eerily pristine. Not a leaf out of place, not a footprint in the soil. It was as if the forest itself was afraid to touch the spot. The only sound was the distant echo of a woodpecker, its tapping rhythm suddenly much too loud. I reached for the radio on my belt, intending to report the disturbance, but my hand hovered in the air. Something told me that this was a message, one that didn't need the chatter of humans to be heard. I studied the doll for a long moment, trying to make sense of the unease that was slowly coiling in my gut. It wasn't just the sight of it that was off. It was the way the limbs were arranged, the twisted smile painted on its face. It was almost human-like. And the way it swung in the gentle breeze, it looked alive, like it was watching me. I turned away, deciding to investigate further before calling it in. Big mistake. That's when I heard it. A whisper, faint and distant but unmistakable. It grew louder as I took a step back, the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the trees. My heart thumped against my ribs as I spun around, searching for the source, but the forest remained still. The only movement was the doll's head bobbing slightly, as if it were nodding in approval. I forced myself to breathe, to think rationally. It was just the wind playing tricks on me, I told myself. But the rational part of my brain was losing ground to the primal fear that was taking over. I took another step back, and that's when I saw them. More dolls, dozens of them, hidden in the underbrush, their glass eyes reflecting the sunlight like tiny mirrors. The laughter grew louder, closer, and I realized with a start that it was coming from all around me. Panic surged through my veins, and I bolted down the path, my boots thudding against the earth as I ran. The laughter grew louder, following me, taunting me. I could feel eyes on me, unseen presences flitting through the shadows. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of my truck, the metal frame a reassuring barrier between me and the unexplained horror I'd left behind. As I sat there, panting and trembling, the forest grew quiet again. The dolls remained, hanging in their macabre display, but the laughter had ceased. It was as if the forest had swallowed it whole. I knew then that I had stumbled upon something much more sinister than a prank. This was a warning, and I had the sinking feeling that the worst was yet to come. I radioed in the location, my voice shaking. "Dispatch, I need backup at the old oak grove. Something's not right here." The static crackled back, and a voice, calm and professional, acknowledged the call. "Roger that, Ranger. Backup is on the way." I waited, the silence of the forest feeling like it was pressing in on me. The trees seemed to lean closer, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. When the other rangers arrived, I led them back to the grove, but the dolls were gone. The only evidence of my encounter was the frayed rope that once held them aloft, swaying slightly in the breeze. They exchanged skeptical glances, but I knew what I'd seen. The next few days passed without incident, but the memory of the dolls and the laughter lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. And then on Friday, the disappearances began. Hikers, campers, even a couple of locals who had ventured into the woods for a day's hunt. All gone without a trace. The tension in the ranger station was thick enough to cut with a knife. We combed the woods, searching for clues, but all we found were more dolls, each one more disturbing than the last. And always that laughter just out of earshot, reminding us that we were not alone. The forest had become a playground for something malevolent, and it was up to us to figure out what before it claimed another victim. We set up campfires, posted patrols, and talked in hushed tones about the legends we'd heard over the years. But none of the stories quite matched what was happening here. It was as if we'd stirred a sleeping giant, and now it was awake, watching us, playing with us. As the moon rose high, casting long shadows through the trees, we gathered around the largest campfire. The flickering light danced across the worried faces of my colleagues, and I knew we were all thinking the same thing. We were in over our heads. The whispers grew, a cacophony of giggles that seemed to come from every direction at once. And then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The forest was silent once more. But this time, it wasn't the silence of a peaceful woods. It was the silence of a predator waiting to strike. In that moment, a twig snapped, and we all jumped, our hearts racing. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night sky, and the shadows grew restless. We formed a tight circle, flashlights piercing the darkness, searching for whatever had made the sound. Nothing moved, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Then one of the lights fell to the ground, flickering erratically. The ranger beside me cursed, reaching down to pick up when we heard it. A soft, rhythmic patter, like tiny feet running across leaves. It grew closer, and the dolls we'd found earlier started to sway in unison, as if dancing to an unheard melody. I looked around the circle of terrified faces, and my own fear reflected back at me. We were in the heart of the forest, surrounded by the very thing we were supposed to protect, and it had turned on us. The laughter grew louder, turning into a cackle that seemed to fill the very air we breathed. A figure emerged from the shadows, and for a second I thought it was a child. But as it drew closer, the illusion shattered. It was one of the missing hikers, but not as we knew them. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, and their eyes were gone, replaced by those same plastic orbs from the dolls. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their arms outstretched, reaching for us. The rangers around me drew their weapons, but the sight of the once human creature only filled me with dread. This wasn't a situation we could solve with bullets and badges. We were facing something that had twisted the very fabric of the forest, something that didn't belong in our world. The creature stopped just short of the fire, its laughter now a guttural growl. And then, as if on cue, more of them appeared, a twisted parade of human forms with dolls' heads. They circled us, their movements synchronized, a macabre ballet of horror. The rangers fired, the gunshots echoing through the trees, but the creatures didn't fall. They just kept coming, their plastic eyes unblinking. One lunged at me, and I swung my flashlight with all my might, connecting with its skull. It stumbled back, but didn't go down. The circle tightened, and our backs were to the fire. We had nowhere to run. The dolls hanging from the trees above us began to swing faster, as if caught in a storm that didn't exist. The heat from the flames grew intense, and I knew we couldn't hold out much longer. In that moment, a gust of wind tore through the clearing, sending embers flying into the night. The dolls' eyes glowed red, and their laughter grew to a crescendo. The creature in front of me paused, its head tilting to the side in a grotesque parody of curiosity. And then it spoke. The voice was high-pitched, unnaturally so, and it sent a shiver down my spine. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, its plastic mouth moving in time with the words. "Now you'll never leave." The others took up the chant, their doll heads nodding in unison. "You shouldn't have come here. Now you'll never leave." The pressure was unbearable, the fear threatening to consume me. And as I looked into the lifeless eyes of the creature before me, I understood that we had awoken something ancient, something that would not be easily put back to sleep. The fire roared, its heat a living thing pushing against our backs. Sweat beaded on our faces, mixing with the dirt and fear that clung to us like a second skin. The creatures grew closer, their glowing eyes and mechanical laughter a hellish symphony that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath us. "We need to get out of here," someone shouted over the din, but it was already too late. They were upon us, their wooden limbs swinging with a ferocity that defied their frail appearance. We fought back with everything we had, our flashlights and batons clashing against their doll-like forms. But for every one we knocked back, two more took its place. A hand, cold and lifeless, grabbed my shoulder. I spun around, ready to fight, but instead found myself face to face with the missing hiker, his dull eyes boring into my soul. The sight of his twisted smile was almost too much to bear. I swung my flashlight with all my might, aiming for the doll's head, and it connected with a sickening crack. The hiker fell to the ground, his body convulsing before going still. The others saw what I'd done and took up the strategy, targeting the dolls' heads with their flashlights. One by one, they dropped, the laughter diminishing as their numbers dwindled. But it was a temporary victory. More of the dolls swarmed in, their twiggy arms reaching, their plastic eyes gleaming in the firelight. In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the trees above us. It was large, a shadow that didn't belong, and it was descending fast. The dolls on the ropes grew still, their laughter replaced by a silent anticipation. The shadow grew closer, blocking out the moon, and I could see it now, a monstrous form, a giant made of branches and leaves, with eyes that burned like the embers of our dying fire. The forest itself had come to claim us, the very essence of nature's wrath made manifest. The creature let out a roar that shook the ground, and the dolls surged forward, driven by an unseen force. The rangers fought bravely, but we were no match for the frenzied mob. We were swarmed, our cries for help swallowed by the cackles of our attackers. In the midst of the chaos, I felt a hand on my arm, pulling me back. It was one of the missing campers, her real eyes wide with terror beneath the plastic mask of a doll. "Follow me," she whispered, her voice human despite the unearthly surroundings. "I know a way out." The world around us was a blur of darkness and shrieks as we sprinted through the underbrush, dodging grasping limbs and leaping over roots that seemed to writhe like serpents. The creature's roars grew fainter, the doll's laughter receding into the distance. We didn't stop until we reached the edge of the forest, where the moon cast a pale glow over a clearing. Panting, we looked back at the forest, the tree lines seeming to pulse with malevolence. What was that? I managed to ask, my voice hoarse. The camper looked at me, her plastic smile twisted into a grimace. "It's what happens when you forget to respect the woods. Now it has a taste for us, and it won't stop until we're all part of it." Her words hung in the air like the mist that clung to the treetops. We had disturbed something ancient, something that would not rest until it had claimed us all. And as we stumbled into the safety of the open field, I couldn't help but feel that our ordeal had only just begun. The forest was watching, waiting for its next move, and we had become its prey.